And welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to be working with you. I want to make sure that you do get all of those questions that you have answered. So a couple of things. I do have the chat box pulled up. So drop something in there for me. You can also send me an email later on. I'll give that to you in just a moment if you have that question. And then right now you are all muted during the session here today, but I do want you to know you can unmute yourself. If at the end of a particular section, if I bring something up and you've got a question around it, unmute and just ask. I'm happy to help get anything answered. So again, I know I had that opportunity to work with some of you in the past, and I just want to make sure that I introduce myself to everyone. My name is Becky Puz. I am one of the Senior Professional Learning Specialists here at IXL. Before I joined IXL, I too was a classroom teacher as well as an instructional coach for my school district in the western suburbs of the Chicagoland area. I used it quite a bit with my own students. I got to see how my colleagues have used it. So you're going to be hearing a lot of stories today around that implementation piece, how I used it, how my colleagues used it. So I'm kind of happy to share all of that with you. Here is my email, though, right underneath my picture. So just simply p@ixl.com. Jot that down, send me those questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So let's go ahead and dive in. And the way that I'd like to get started is I simply like to start talking about exactly kind of that reminder of what IXL is from our previous PD sessions. And maybe even you've now seen in your classes since some of you have been using it. IXL really can be that not only teaching tool for you, but also that learning tool for your students. And I think both of those pieces are so important. We do have all of these different components that are listed here. So hopefully you've seen, or some of you have seen some of the curriculum. That's all of our skills from pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. We also have these great instructional resources and different ways to engage your class. A first of its kind assessment suite, actionable analytic reports that are giving you the data that you need on how your students are doing, not only on the skills, but even from the diagnostic, if you do choose to give the diagnostic. We also have this great district partnership. And I think I mentioned that just a moment ago. When you get IXL, you get people, right? You get a team of people that really helps to support all of you in your implementation. Now, all of these components are really designed to work together, and that gives you everything you need to really maximize the learning for your students. So we're going to be going just a little bit deeper into our curriculum today. I know the last time we started talking about those skills, I'll review some things as well. But within our deep dive into that curriculum, we're going to be looking at how it's mapped to support personalized learning opportunities for your student. And by doing that deep dive into our curriculum, it is going to help us to better understand some of those reports that we talk about later on in our session. So after that deep dive, then we're going to talk about some other fun ways that you could use IXL to keep your kids motivated and engaged while working in IXL. And I am excited to introduce you to one of our newest features. That is our quizzes. After that, that's when we jump into the analytics. We will explore how it uncovers insights from your students' work in IXL so that you can make those really smart instructional decisions every single day. So back in Foundations 1, the session that we did previous to this one, we introduced the curriculum to you at that point. And perhaps by now you have seen that it is incredibly vast. But have you also noticed how highly targeted and well scaffolded all those skills are? The way that our skills are structured is that key reason why IXL is so effective at helping you differentiate your instruction for your students. And that is going to be sort of that focus you're going to hear throughout our session today. So let's talk about those skills just a little bit more. I really want you to have that really good understanding of what they are and how you can use them. So these skills for your students are made up of a combination of computer-generated and very carefully created questions so that your students are going to have lots of opportunities to apply their knowledge to many unique questions. Plus, because each student in your class will see different questions, then you never have to worry about anybody copying off of one another. Here's just an example here on the screen. And I love this shot right here because it shows the many different types of questions and even different interactions that your students might experience. And by doing this, I feel like it gives your students lots of different ways to learn and practice, and hopefully keep them interested as well as engaged. So, in other words, they're not always just going to be filling in the blank. Sometimes they might have to drag and drop those answers, or sometimes they might have to create a graph, or maybe they have to highlight a part of a sentence. So these are just some examples of the many different types of questions and interactions that they're going to see. Also, when your students are practicing a skill, there are a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes, and that's to help them learn and grow and achieve that authentic mastery. We have spent a lot of time fine-tuning that scaffolding within each of our skills so that your students are introduced to new concepts, not only at the right time, but also in the right order. And the best way for me to do this, to share this with you, or for us to take a look at, is for us to walk through an example together. So we're going to be taking a look at a real skill that has some of that finely tuned complex scaffolding behind the scenes. Now, this is a great skill where students actually have to draw lines of symmetry right on a shape. And here is an example or a problem from the very first step. So in other words, as a student would log in and start working on this skill, draw lines of symmetry for the shape. This is an example of what the student might see. Okay, so drawing lines of symmetry. How many lines of symmetry are on this very first shape? Of course, there's just that one line of symmetry. All right. If we've now progressed, if the student has progressed as they're working on this skill, this would be the second level of difficulty that they might experience. Notice the question still stays the same. Draw all the lines of symmetry. But now we have advanced to that next level of difficulty. So here we're going to give them a shape that is going to have more than one line. In this case, vertical and horizontal. Now, we've ramped up the difficulty just a bit more. This is that third level of difficulty within this same skill. Again, notice the question here hasn't changed at all. But you might be wondering, okay, like, why is this the third level of difficulty? Like, what makes this harder? Well, of course, it's because the shapes are rotated, which is a little harder because sometimes students naturally only think about vertical and horizontal lines of symmetry. Here, they're going to get shapes that might have one or two or several lines of symmetry because we don't want students to make assumptions about not only how many lines there are to draw, but also what direction those lines should go in. And here's an example from that final level of difficulty within the skill. Again, why is this question here? Why are these shapes even harder? At first glance, they might even seem a little bit more simple. But here the student will get a shape where there are lots of lines of symmetry. Now, for you as teachers, you actually have the ability to see those different levels of difficulty within this skill. And that feature is going to be right on your teacher side. So I'm going to actually open up this particular skill from my teacher side, and I'm going to use that 3-character ID to search for that skill. So there we go, draw lines of symmetry. So here is my teacher side. And down here on the bottom right, let me highlight that for you just a moment. You have this teacher tool that's called Jump a Level. So before you start having your students, let's say, work on this skill, right? Here I can see there are a couple of lines here. And I noticed that because that blue line there is highlighted. So here is that question from that very first step. Remember what I said, first step, there's just going to be the one line. All right, let's click on that arrow. Here is a shape from that second level of difficulty. And that starts at about a SMART score of a 39. All right, so I'm thinking as a teacher right now, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is something brand new for my students, drawing lines of symmetry. And right now, I really have only taught them about just simply like one line. So on this particular day, when I've given my kids this skill to work on, I might say to them, you know what, I kind of want you only to work on that skill until you get to a 39. Because now I know that after that 39, we're on the second level, and they will start to see shapes that have that, more than one line of symmetry. So this tool, Jump a Level, was a great one for me as a teacher to use to kind of preview those different levels of rigor within a skill. And now I am able to set those verbal goals for my students. So great for some whole class teaching and also for determining those appropriate goals or how far you want your students to work on a skill. Now, not only do we know that there is that scaffolding within a particular skill, but there is also deliberate scaffolding that is happening across our skills. In other words, we know how skills are connected or build off of one another, or what skill or skills the student might need to understand before they can grasp a more complex one, for example. So our curriculum is built on thousands, and I do mean thousands, of these interconnected skills, creating this very dense skill map with almost no gaps at all. This makes it really possible for you to differentiate your learning for any one of your students on any topic. For example, like you see on this screen, let's say that your student is having some trouble with drawing lines of symmetry. I would actually have them pause their practice and I would ask them then to work on a building block skill to build their understanding of what that line of symmetry is before asking them then to draw those lines of symmetry. So not only is our curriculum created in this very careful way, but IXL has also made it very simple for not only your students, but for you as well to use that scaffolding and to find that scaffolding to differentiate that learning by using what we call in-skill recommendations. Now, these recommendations are going to be resources that are located at the bottom of a skill practice page for your students as well as you. And these resources are going to be supporting the skill that the student is currently working on. Let me demonstrate. So let me go over to my student side right now. By the way, let me pause here for just a moment. Do you notice, I hope you notice, something that is very different than perhaps when your students were working in IXL last year. Last year, as they were working, or I should say this year when they do go to join in, we have kind of revamped the look of the student site. And now your students have a brand new tab here at the top, this My IXL tab. This is now their dashboard. So throughout the presentation, when you ever hear me say something about a student's dashboard, this is what I'm referring to. It's where they land when they now sign in to IXL. And then they will be able to clearly see if you are starring any skills for them. They will be able to see it underneath this tab. So they will know exactly, very easily, what they should be working on from their teacher. That'll make more sense here in just a little bit. All right, but I wanted to share with you those in-skill recommendations. Let's look for a particular skill. Again, let me use this one to demonstrate that. All right, so let's say that I'm this student, right? And I have been asked to work on this particular skill. So a couple of things before I get started. Let's say I really don't know what I need to do. I can turn to a couple resources that are here. The first one is that Learn with an Example. This is always here at the very beginning of every single math as well as ELA skill at the very beginning. So if I'm that student and I don't know what to do, I can click on that example and I see this great example of what some of the questions might look like. Look at this great detail and even definitions right here. So scrolling on down, I get to take a look, do some of that learning, right? And now that I've done that learning and I have a better understanding, all right, I'm going to go right back to practice and I'm going to begin working. I also have another option. I can look at the example, and I also have the ability to watch a video tutorial. Now, we've added videos into all of our math curriculum, starting at the 3rd grade level, going all the way up now through Algebra 2. I believe we're almost through with the entire Algebra 2 curriculum there with our videos. Geometry for sure, and again, we've been working on Algebra 2. Also, within our ELA curriculum, we've been adding videos there. So those are going to be down on sort of like the lower end up through 1st grade in our reading foundation and some reading strategy skills. But you'll also see the videos in our 6th through 8th grade writing skills in ELA. So again, another great resource. The student has the ability to watch the video, and perhaps that'll help support them in their work on this skill. But let's just simply say both have used those and they're still having a bit of difficulty. Then down here at the bottom are going to be these in-skill recommendations underneath that work it out category. And here they're going to be able to see some foundational skills for them to work on. So for instance, maybe the reason that I'm struggling on this skill is I can't remember what a trapezoid is. So I have that ability to click on this particular in-skill rec, right? And build my knowledge, like fill that gap. So I can get a couple of questions here. And then once I have that learning that I need to be successful, I'm building that confidence, I can click and return to the original skill here at the very bottom for the student. By the way, students can click back as many levels as they need. A student could actually start on a calculus skill and keep clicking backwards. They would eventually wind up in a kindergarten skill. Now, not something that I share with the students that I've worked with. And by the way, it would take an awful lot of clicks. But please know that is available. So this is where that scaffolding is coming into play for your students. Also, notice I had 4 options for skills here, but I also can see that I have a lesson. This resource is kind of like that little mini study guide. And each one of the lessons, they're in our curriculum starting at 3rd grade, going up through geometry. These are going to be introducing the topic, providing a high-level review of some key vocabulary. It's going to walk them through some example problems. So they really do a straightforward way to learn the building blocks of this concept. All right, again, when I've done that learning as a student, I'm ready. Go back to practice right here at the very top. We've linked that for your students. Now, we're always going to call these work it out or building blocks skills, right? Underneath this area, as long as the SMART score is less than a 90. But once they reach the challenge zone in any of our skills, and the challenge zone is always going to begin at a SMART score of a 90. Here, these recommendations are going to change. Let me show you what that looks like. I have a skill that my demo student here has worked on recently. So here, student reached the challenge zone 91. Take a look. So no longer are those called work it out. Now they're called next up. So they're going to be the perfect skills that take your students' knowledge to the next level. It's like that great opportunity for some extension. So for your students, I know you're older learners there. These in-skill recs are that critical learning tool for building that independence. It can empower all of your students to identify and maybe even fix their own knowledge. It can show them that even if you aren't around or another, a parent, another adult isn't around, that they can find ways to get the help that they need and propel themselves forward. Now, because on IXL, you have access to skills at all levels, you always have the flexibility to use the built-in scaffolding within and across skills to meet all of your students exactly where they are at. So quick pause for a moment. What questions do you have? You can either unmute or type something into that chat box, anything at all around that scaffolding or those in-skill recommendations that I just shared. As you can see, our curriculum is going to automatically target and differentiate learning with all of our adaptive skills, in those in-skill recommendations we just saw. But in addition to what we've seen so far, IXL can also target individual student learning by providing personalized recommendations for growth. Now, maybe some of you are familiar with the way that the diagnostic can pinpoint their levels and generate a personalized action plan. But the real-time diagnostic is not the only way to get that personalized skill recommendations on IXL. IXL is using insights from their work in the curriculum on those skills, as well as the diagnostic to power some personalized guidance for all of your learners. And all that guidance can be found right on the student's recommendation wall. I do have somebody said, just I'm pause right there for one moment though. I did ask, somebody said, where are those 3 letters you typed in? Where are those coming from? Great question. So each of our skills has their very own 3-character ID. Sometimes they're letters, sometimes they're numbers. Often they're a combination of. Let me go to the teacher side for just a moment and show you where those are. So you'll see them in many different places, but here's an example right here. I'm on my teacher side. Off to the right-hand side, let me make it just a bit bigger here. There we go. Let me mute one of your colleagues there. All right. So here off to the right-hand side, I can see this 3-character ID, those 3 letters. So I know now the ID number goes along with this skill. So that's how I was searching for it. Or I could come to that learning tab and let's say I'm on math as a teacher and I'm looking for something very specific. Let's say I'm looking for this skill. You will always see that 3-character ID off to the right-hand side. It's a great way to share and give to your students, and they can use the search bar to find a skill. Okay, recommendation wall, okay? You are very welcome. So as a teacher, you are able to view all of the recommendation walls for each and every one of your students. And you can think of the recommendations walls as sort of a personalized playlist for each one of your learners. Let me show you where that is. So let me go back to my teacher's side. Underneath that learning tab, your learning tab as a teacher, you're going to see these recommendation walls. Now, again, here is the rec wall for one of my students named Bradley. His wall is going to look different than this student Mila and more. No 2 students' recommendation walls are going to look exactly the same. And students can always access their own recommendation wall just as we did from their own learning tab. So let me go over to my student side and show you what that looks like. So here is the student Mila. I can look at anybody's rec wall, but let me show you where the rec wall is for the students now. So students, when they land on that dashboard, right? Here they see their recommendations or this rec wall. Now we're going to show them their top 5, but here they can choose to see all of their recommendations all in one place. So this is really a really easy way for students to get to that personalized guidance. So from here, we're going to show them all of these skills that are being recommended for them to work on. In other words, meeting their different learning needs. And then we're going to show them and we're going to kind of guide them to how they should think about this wall. Let me explain what that means. So for instance, this one over here says go for gold. So this is a skill the student has already worked on. And you see that their SMART score is already up here at a 91. Remember, the highest that the SMART score can go to is a 100. So this is that reminder, hey, keep working on that skill until you reach that SMART score of a 100. Sometimes they might see something that says, try something new. This is just an area that they haven't explored just yet on IXL. So step in, try something new. Let me see if my student, okay, here's one that says next up for this student. And this is one of those next up skills because they did so well on this particular skill. Here's one that says, okay, try this one out because you did so well on that last one. So we're going to have different ways for the student to walk through this wall. By the way, they can also filter this wall. If they only want to look at all of their math skills, then they will just choose the blue pyramid. Or if they're looking for just their ELA skills on this wall, have them click that green book and more. Now, the skills in this wall are recommended to meet those different learning needs, as we mentioned. The wall can be really fun. They can keep scrolling. I have honestly never gotten to the bottom of the wall just yet. So there's this endless supply of recommendations. Your kids are never going to run out. And the wall is always being updated as students are working on IXL. So all of these skills are relevant and appropriate for them right now. It's just simply another way that IXL is empowering your students to own their learning. They can access this list of customized suggestions, and it's kind of up to them to decide where they want to go. So here's a couple of ways I recommend thinking about using this recommendation wall. First off, of course, it's to keep your students progressing when you can't directly supervise them. It's always going to have those skills on it that are relevant and appropriate for just them. I also think that they are great for some sub-plans. This is one of the recommendations somebody recently said. So in other words, they, maybe in the sub-plans, it says, I have assigned a skill for them to work on during this certain period of time, and I want my students to work on the assignment first. However, if they complete that assignment and there's still time left in class, the student can always go to something on their rec wall and work on that. Also, rotations. I know teachers do some of those rotations in their classrooms with their students. And if that is something you're doing, when they rotate over to an IXL station, you could always have on that day, pick something from your rec wall. And then, of course, great for bell work as they're walking in or if they finish earlier. So there are many different ways you can think about how you might use that recommendation wall with your students. Any questions at all about it? So there's another type of skill that I also want to point out to you as well. I want to make sure that you are aware of it. Again, I want you to be thinking about IXL and like what works for you and your students. So because of that, I want to point out this different kind of a skill that some of your students might be ready for. So let me move to my teacher side and show you where this type of skill is. We call these checkpoint skills. So a checkpoint skill is going to challenge your students to strategically apply knowledge from multiple concepts. And you'll find these checkpoint skills. I'm on my teacher side right now. So here underneath that learning tab here at the very top, I'm going to come into math. They are in our math skills in just 3 levels. So if you have students that are going to be working on some math skills, either in an 8th grade level, an Algebra 1 level, or a geometry level, then you might see some of these checkpoint skills. Let me demonstrate. We'll use 8th grade. So from here, as I'm opening up the full curriculum that you as a teacher, your students will see as well, underneath some of the topics, for instance, proportional relationships, here are all of our skills for your students to work on. But here's one I noticed at the bottom. Here's one of those checkpoints. You can identify it by the flag listed down below. Now, let me explain what these are. They are sort of similar to an end of a unit test because they are going to be challenging your students to see and apply some of their knowledge very strategically from multiple concepts. And you can use these checkpoints to gain this accurate insight into whether students understand the material for a given topic. They are great for identifying students who have some gaps in their knowledge and providing the exact foundational skills that are going to close that gap. Let me just show you an example of this. So this checkpoint skill, here's that for instance. Here's one of the questions that they might see here. Again, it is a bit more challenging. So think about using or assigning some of these checkpoint skills to your students, maybe at the end of a unit around that particular topic, or maybe right before some kind of a high stakes assessment. Again, the questions here are going to be at a fairly high level of rigor. And to ever assign something as that reminder, you're going to come to that star, and then that box appears, and this is where you can assign it. I know it says suggest means the exact same things. So here I'm going to assign this to all of the students on my roster. And then when they log in on that dashboard from their teacher area, they will see that this skill has been assigned to them. Okay. So that is what a checkpoint is. I do want to show you in math, again, a couple of examples of these very sort of challenging types of questions that the students might experience. Now, I've kind of walked through math just a bit. I also want to highlight ELA for you as well. So let's go back to my teacher side. If you are that ELA teacher, from your learning tab, you do have, so you're going to click your learning tab, and from here, you're going to come to your language arts subject. Scrolling on down, if you're looking for something by a grade level, then we are looking at things in that grade level view. So go down to that grade level you're looking for. Maybe even though you've got that older student, you know that they're working more like at that 6th grade level. So open up those 185 skills. With our language arts curriculum, what we've already done is we have broken it into those different strands. Makes it really easy for you to find something. So maybe I know that I need some work, or my students need some work in some grammar and mechanics at this level. Then find that topic you're looking for, and then underneath are going to be those skills that support your students' understanding of a topic. Again, hover over to get an idea of what the skill will look like, what some of the questions will look like. And when you're satisfied, you know this is what you want them to work on, then use that starring tool to assign it to whomever you want. Everyone on your roster, or maybe a particular group of students, or even just an individual student or two by clicking the arrow off to the right-hand side. So starring is that way of assigning it to your students. I do see a question. Somebody says, does a student have the ability to see all of the recommendation skills they have mastered? Yeah, on their wall, they will be able to see, let me just go to my student side here for a moment. Anything when they're working on our skills. And let me demonstrate. So my demo student, by the way, is in here as a 5th grader. So let me just go into, let's say, math for just a moment. And I'm going to go to that 5th grade because my student here would have worked on some skills, I hope. Again, this is just a demonstration, like a student demo account. So like, for instance, this particular skill, I can see it's listed here, but I can see that SMART score is off to that right-hand side. And for right now, for this student, he's worked on this skill, or she's worked on this skill until they got to a 17. Here, this one is, I can see is that 91. So yeah, anything I've worked on, I can see the SMART score right beside it. Thank you for that. All right, great questions, you guys. Keep them coming. Next, I want to show you some ways that you can use IXL to make learning a little extra fun and possibly motivating for your students. And we do offer a built-in engagement tools, a few of them that you can use to create some collaboration or some friendly competitions. And let's talk about those. Russ, I did see your question. I promise you I'll get to that in just a moment. So, engagement tools. All right. So the first one I want to share with you is this opportunity to create a leaderboard. And a leaderboard is that fun way to set up that friendly competition. Now, teachers, you can create that leaderboard by going to your My IXL tab here at the very top. Underneath your dashboard, your My IXL tab, right here, kind of in the left center, these are your engagement tools. So for me, I want to create this leaderboard for my students. So friendly competition, right? So who do I want to participate? I can choose everyone or just a particular class. Then what is it that I'm recording in this competition? Is it just simply how many questions they've answered? Or am I going to be focusing on the only thing that counts in this is like the number of correct answers? But one of my favorite ones is literally just time spent. I want this competition to be around like the time that my students are spending as they're working in IXL. Maybe you have a goal on how much time you want them to spend per week, then this is what I would choose. Now, what subjects are going to count in this competition? And maybe it's just your language arts. And then don't forget to pick, is it going to be any grade level or is it going to be certain grade levels? You get to decide that. So maybe it's only the ELA skills from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that are going to count in this. Okay, pick your starting and ending date and then go ahead and name it. And then just simply click create. So now that you have created one, you saw how very simple that was. You can come here and this is the example of what it would look like once that competition is underway. It will automatically update every 5 seconds, so you will see the most up-to-date standings in that competition. You can create multiple leaderboards. In fact, I think you can create about 10 different ones. So there's going to be some endless opportunities for these competitions. So for instance, maybe it's just that friendly competition for a particular class period. Maybe it's the number of questions they're answering correctly during a 15-minute class period. Or maybe you open up one for the entire week long, and maybe that one is around usage, right? Time spent. But once the competition is over with, your top 3 kids will get certificates. Now, I know you've got some older learners, but I do find that some of those certificates are even important to them. Send that home with them or even share it with them digitally. Your students are also able to keep track, I must say, of those competitions, and that is back on their dashboard. They will be able to see that leaderboard once it has been created. So there was a question, how can you hide the grade level so students are not discouraged that we're assigning lower grade level work? Thank you for that question. So if you're following along, let's go to my teacher side, go to your teacher side. On this top right corner here, looks like there's a mountain over here. This is your settings. So click on that mountain on that top right. And then you're going to come into your profile and settings. You've got some options here to kind of customize the experience for your students. Let's talk about those options. So let's start at the top and we'll work our way down. So here is that top option to hide the grade levels. Very quick question. Can we do this universally for all of Oakmont? So this would be each teacher. So as a team, maybe you need to decide that you want to do this. I highly recommend doing this. So everyone, it looks like Emily is sort of saying, Emily, do you want to unmute yourself for a moment and mention this to the staff?
Yeah, so this was something that we did do when we did our math demo last year. We hid the grade levels because I don't know if that was Russ that asked that question, but we did think it was important for students to not really be aware of what grade level they were working on, just working on the skill.
Yeah.
We didn't want that to be discouraging. So we did this universally during our math demo last year. And we probably will want to do this. So Becky, I guess my question is to avoid having each teacher have to go in and do this.
Yeah.
Is it a setting I can change and I can just universally hide all the grade levels?
It's a great
If we
question.
can do that, I would like to just do it. So it's one less thing teachers have to do.
Yes, we don't have that ability in those admin accounts. So teachers, this one is up to you. It's so easy to do though. So again, go to that mountain up there. In fact, if you're following along, let's just do it now. Go to your mountain, click your profile and settings. And it is this very first feature, hide the grade levels. You're going to click those 3 dots and just say, I'm going to hide this for everyone. And then click that green check. Oh, they can't log in right now. Okay. So this is what you're going to do as soon as you're able to get that login information. This is like step 1. You get your account, you get logged in. The first thing you're going to do is go to your settings and hide the grade level. So let me do it for all my students. I'm going to click the green check. So as a reminder for you, there is a little grade level map here. Print this off. You could put it next to your computer in case you want to see that. But there's that little hidden grade level map, but let me go back. So now that I've hidden the grade level, let me show you what that looks like. So for not only your students, but for you as well, in that learning tab, take a look. So now instead of showing our skills to your students or them seeing it, all they see is these different levels. So even for myself as a teacher, I had a 5th grader who was working on skills at the 2nd grade. And I really hated saying to him like, hey, you're going to come back and let's work on some 2nd grade skills. So in this case, I did it for all of my students as well. And this was just hey, we're going to work on some skills at level C today, or we're going to work on level E today and more. So that is number 1. As soon as you get that account, recommend come here. There's a couple of things in this profile and setting I want you to think about as well. Here, after we do that setting, right, change it to the alphabetical order for everyone. There is also a timer. Your students see a timer as they're working. I know that can be distracting for all kids, up to you. You know your kids better than I. If they are distracted or they don't like to see that timer, you could hide that from them. Okay. There is also audio support beyond 2nd grade that you can extend. So let me back up. As kids are working on the skills, if they're working on a skill up through second grade, they will automatically see audio support built in. Math, ELA, science, social studies. But if you want to extend it out beyond second grade, you can come here and click the three dots. Now, it'll go up through fifth grade in ELA, okay? But it'll also go up through eighth grade in math. So again, when you're here, perhaps that is something, and for me, I just automatically clicked on it. I always thought if my students need the support, that audio support, they should have it. We do have Spanish support to build in into our math skills, but that is something you would have to enable. If you enable this feature, students would have the opportunity, for students to have that question in math translated into Spanish. They then could toggle back and forth between English and Spanish. There's also a scratch pad that is built right in math, ELA, into our diagnostic as well. And I know sometimes students don't use that tool correctly, but it gives them the option of working it out right on the screen. You have that opportunity to hide the scratch pad. And then our final feature we have is we do have some games that are built into our math and our ELA up through our fifth grade curriculum in both subject areas. I know that many times teachers don't want their students playing the games, right? So if that's the case, you want to say, yes, I want a toggle over to yes. I want to hide those games from my students. That's not where I want them spending their time. Now, certainly have a fun Friday. Perhaps every now and again, you could open up those games for your students as well. So just a couple of thoughts. We're going to all hide the grade level. That's number one. And then the number two is we're going to extend it out just for everyone. That is just the first thing we're going to all do once we get all of those accounts. Okay. So thank you, Russ, for that great question. So there's something else on IXL that I want to share with you. This is one of our newer features, newer tools that we've just recently added in. And this is your ability to create a quiz using our skills. You might want to create a short 5-question quiz to do a little checking for understanding, let's say after a lesson. Or you may want to create a longer assessment spanning multiple concepts to cap off the unit. Up to you how you want to do this. These custom-built assessments can offer this window into what your students know for virtually any IXL topic. And that makes them the perfect tool to assess and address any of those skill gaps. So let me show you how you create one, and then I'll show you the student experience. So let's go to my teacher side. Again, you'll be spending time a lot in this My IXL tab here at the very top. And your quiz feature is just simply here off to that middle right. So you start off by creating that quiz. Let's go ahead and name it. We'll create that ELA quiz. So I don't know, ELA, say ELA quiz 1. There's my title. Let's go ahead and select a skill. So let's go to language arts. And you can, when you click language arts, right, you can choose, are these questions going to come from a level like that ABCD thing, or are they going to come from one of those skill plans? Now, remember these skill plans, remember standards and textbooks. If you do want it to come from one of your standards, then of course you're going to have pinned a standard. Let me show you what I mean by that. So teachers, in your learning tab, we can find skills by, remember that grade level, or we can also find skills by looking at what we call these skill plans. And we have 4 different types, and I'm just going to highlight a couple that I think that you might use. So for instance, your state standards, our skill plans are right here in this blue jump to bar. Let me click on my standards. So let's just say that we are looking for a standard around the language arts coming from a certain grade level. This is now your side, right? So you're doing works around, let's say, some 6th grade language arts standards. So after you teach your lesson around, let's say, this particular standard, what we've done is we've already pulled, or sometimes have even created skills for your kids to work on. That'll help support them with that learning around the work you just did on that standard. So again, we've got a couple options. Hover over the one, you decide which one or ones you want them to work on, and then use the starring feature to assign it to your students. Let's just go ahead and assign that to my students. Now, I always recommend, do you notice that gray pin here? You'll see it in a couple different places. Anytime you pin something by clicking on it, do you notice it turned it that golden color? So now you will always have easy access to it. So in other words, pin everything you think you're going to use, because then when you click on skill plans, then it just simply sits at the very top. But we are also aligned to skills, or I'm sorry, we are also aligned to a number of different textbooks that perhaps you are using. In fact, hundreds. You could scroll through, take a look at the different textbooks, and find skills aligned right down to the very chapter within any of these textbooks. And then if I would even continue further, we're even aligned to a variety of different test preps. Let me just show you where that is. Let's go back to the very top. And so here's our test prep category. Here are all the other assessments that we are aligned to as well. Here we'll take the scores from the students after they take these tests, and then we'll show you the skills that they should be working on around particular scores on any of these assessments. So let me go back to the top. So I pinned that skill plan. Pin everything you think you're going to use. So now let's go to my quiz. I was just in the process of creating one. I hadn't saved it, so that's why I got to start here from the very beginning. Okay, so we said ELA quiz 1. I'm going to select that's coming from language arts. Is the questions going to come from a particular level or those skill plans? Well, I pinned it, so it's going to come from my standards. And I'm going to have it come from my informational text standards. And definitely around key ideas and details. Yep, this is the one I want. So here we go. Let's add some questions. Okay, this is around compare and contrast. So how many questions do I want? I don't know. I'm going to make this a short one. And then I want 5 questions. Let's go ahead and add them. So you just created a quiz. You can come here. You can do a couple of things when you look at the questions. Now, remember we talked about the different levels of difficulty? Well, I can change that. You know what? The first couple of questions I just want coming from the easiest level of difficulty on this skill. And looking at this particular question, you know what? Let's generate a different one. Okay, I'm happy with that one. So adjust it, right? Take a look and adjust. When you're ready, you're going to review it for sure. You're going to decide, do you want to show those results immediately to your students as soon as they finish? Or do you want to only show them the results once the quiz has completely ended? And then is the order, is it going to be the same for everyone, or do you want to randomize the order of the questions? And then select your students who you want to take it, and then pause. Here's why. Because as soon as you hit publish, this goes live to your students in that exact moment. So let's say you aren't ready for them. Maybe you created the night before, and if you clicked publish, they would actually see that the night before and have big brother, big sister, mom or dad help them with their quiz perhaps. So to me, this is where I come and I just say save. So it is sitting down here in draft form. It's all ready to go. So as soon as then I am ready for them to take it, I'm going to step back in and I'm going to go ahead then and publish the quiz for my students. All right, I am ready to publish this thing. So now I have an active quiz for my students. Now, where do they see this quiz that I just created? So again, every time they log in on their dashboard from their teacher, anything you've been starring is here. But look, here's my quiz. So I haven't started it yet. I can get going. Now, like a paper pencil kind of a thing, students can preview all the questions first and then decide where they want to start. And then after they would go through and they would answer these questions, and I don't want to spend much time doing this. Let's just go ahead and answer some and say save. After they answer it, they would be able to see their results after they take the test. So how can we make quizzes for our students who can all be in the same class with reading levels from elementary to high school? That's a great question. So how do we make quizzes for our students? So I think you're going to, in my mind anyhow, I completely understand what you're saying. So I think you're going to have to create perhaps some different quizzes. Now they can be all around the same, let's say, topic. Maybe that topic is main idea, right? So create that topic. Let's see. So come here, we'll create it. We're going to call this test 2. But I want you to play around with this. Here I can say just main idea. Let's see what I get here. So now I can see lots of different, this is coming from a B level. Remember, these are coming from that C level, D level, and more. So remember, have that little guide, that hidden grade level map. So B level would be a kindergarten level, C is first grade and more. So this is where you're making that decision, right? What level? And then when you're adding the student, let's grab this one. When you're adding the students there, make sure that those students, so this is still going to be around main idea, right? But it's going to be at their level. So there's that. Let's see. Also, students might be in math with geometry, algebra 1, and lit. Yes. I'm not sure. Amy, can you frame that into a question for me then? And then Allie, I did see if a student is listed at a 10th grade level, but achieving at the 6th grade level for a skill, could they have audio based on the level? Yes, it's always going to be based on the level of content that they're working on. So even though they are that 10th grader, if they are working on 6th grade math skills, because you enable that audio support, they will have it up through those 8th grade skills that they're working on. Thank you for that. All right. I hope I've been answering those questions for you. Keep them coming. These are fantastic questions. Now, as you come to the end, this is, me here. We looked at this one. We've saved and exited. By the way, even in this actually, there are 3 dots here. I want to point out these 3 dots. One of you could, let's say, create a quiz. You do have that ability to share with other teachers there at your school. You could also make a copy of a quiz. You can make one as the pre-test, one as the post-test. You can always add students after even an active quiz has started. And then once you have ended the quiz at the very, very end, then you'll be able to see the results of their work below. Let me just use this one as that example. So here's what one would look like after it has ended. You can look at it by the number of questions they got correct or percentage score. And we aren't using the SMART score here. We are truly using like raw student score data. From here, you could hover over the student's name. You'd be able to see their individualized report. And then finally, here's that question review piece. And I love this piece because now I can see like question number 9. I had a lot of students miss that one. So maybe I now know that I want to do a little review around this particular question. And here's that question listed off to the left. A question I get all the time is how to support math teachers when they have students in geometry, algebra, and financial lit all at the same time. A question I get all the time is how to support math teachers. So I believe you're saying like all at the same time. So they're all in the same room, I guess, all like during a certain time period, I believe is probably what you are saying. Okay, Emily says that's a question. This is our model. Yep. So Emily says this is a question that I believe you are all going to be addressing. I've got a couple ideas. Emily, you and I could talk about that too a little bit afterwards. Yes. For me, honestly, I used to like to do rotations. So I would have some students working in IXL, maybe those students that are, and put them on an algebra. What did you say? Maybe have them working on a geometry skill while I work small group with some kids in algebra. And then I have them rotate. So that is the model I personally used as well in my own classrooms. So I would do the rotational model. Did you see another? Let's see. It's a constant, yes. But does that kind of help support? I mean, you can use, I want you to think about using IXL flexibly. Again, have those couple rotations that are going on. Work with kids at your back table. in algebra, right? And then have an IXL station going on. But those kids that are in the IXL station are working on geometry skills, and then switch. Then your geometry kids come to you, you do small group with them, work with them, while your algebra 1 kids rotate, and then they work on an algebra skill. Not everybody in the same room has to be working on the exact same skill. Teachers, in your My IXL tab, in your roster, let me click on my roster. This is just all of my students that are rostered to me. So that might be my algebra 1, my geometry, and more. So this is everybody. But you have this ability off to the right to come and create different groups of students within your roster. So maybe I want to say, looking at here's my algebra 1 student. And I'm going to come to those 3 dots. And now I'm going to choose, this is my full roster, like who is in algebra 1. So all my algebra 1 kids, within a click, I've chosen that entire group. Okay. And I'm done. Now I'm going to say, okay, here's my geometry, geo group. And I'm going to add those students. And then now when you go to star those assignments, you're going to quickly use the star and only assign that algebra 1 skill to these students and more. So I hope that helps just a little bit about how to quickly assign skills to specific groups of kids. That's in that My IXL and in your roster. All right. Lots of great questions. So now that we've taken a look, we've talked about the skills, right? We've talked about the scaffolding for your students and how they can find a skill to maybe fill a knowledge gap before going back and working on a skill you've assigned. I also want to start talking a little bit more about the data and how you can use that data, how your students are performing on the skills to help them with exactly what they need. Let's talk about the data first. Before I do, I want to remind you also of our diagnostic. And I believe I did see that you have what we call a snapshot window that is open for your students. And that means that when they log into IXL, they're going to be asked to go ahead in and start taking the diagnostic. So have them log in and have them step into that arena and begin taking the diagnostic. So this is what it is going to look like for your students when the diagnostic has been set up. And actually, let me come here really fast. I want to open up a new window here for just a moment because I want to show you exactly what this looks like. Give me one moment here. One second, because I want to show you this view. Oh, didn't mean to put that there. There we go. And golden. Here's the password. Let me sign in. So once that snapshot, yep, is set. So this is something that Emily or your admin are they've already set up. So when your students log in, this is what they are going to see. And it's going to let them know that we want them to take this diagnostic by a certain date. So I recommend having them take it as soon as you possibly can, give them the time to take it. So from here, they're just going to say get started. And this is what it looks like once they get started. Now, since you are subscribed to both math and ELA, students are going to have the option of whether they want to start taking the math portion of it or start taking the language arts portion of it. My demo student here obviously has already started language arts, so that's why it says continue. Now, students are going to start here in the diagnostic with questions from their rostered grade level, and then it is going to adapt from there. It'll get harder for them if they're answering those questions correctly. And of course, it will get easier for them as they are, let's say, missing some of their questions. But it's a pretty positive experience for your kids. But this is what it looks like if they say, let's say, get a question correct. They get that feedback. That's right. They get those dancing dots. Let's say, what do I have to do? Select 2 points and draw that line. Let's say they miss a question. What's the slope? I'm just typing in something for right now. This is what it looks like when they miss a question. Like, not quite. We'll work on that a little bit later. It is going to show them that it's like starting to narrow them down as they are working. Now, if they truly get to a question that they really don't know the answer to, there is that option down here in this bottom right-hand corner to say, you know what, I don't know this yet. It does mark that last question as incorrect, but it keeps the process moving along. There's also a scratch pad here. I always told my kids this was not a mental math test. So let's say they had to work something out right here on the screen. I'm just typing something in here for right now. They would be, they would be having the option to do that on the screen. And then they're also going to see this little progress indicator up here on this top right-hand side. So they don't have to ask you how many more questions. They'll just watch that move across their screen. And as they're working, they are able to come over here and see their levels. Now, certainly my student here hasn't finished. So that's why it's reminding us, the student here, like, hey, you better go back in and continue working to get that full data that you need. So let's go back in and let's step back in to continue working. So this is the process for the student. And we call it a snapshot window, a window of time, right? Because we want to sort of look at everybody's information during certain periods of time throughout the year. Now, with that in mind, let me go back to my side here. With that in mind, we are looking for the student to pinpoint, to get that single score. And again, it's in both math and ELA. So once they pinpoint, first off, how long does this take initially? So it does take somewhere between 45 to 60 minutes per subject. And that's kind of like an average. It might take some of your students a little longer and even some of your students a little less time. So again, start off the year by making sure they go in and complete it. And by completing it, again, I mean that they have that single pinpointed score. And then once they have completed it, we do recommend have them step back in outside of that window. Once that window is over, once they've gotten that original score, have them step back in at any time. That is going to update their scores, and it will even update all of these skills that we're going to recommend for them to work in. Now, it's going to take the full 45, 60 minutes initially, but if you have them step in on a regular basis, it could be about 10 minutes. And within 10 minutes of time, they're going to have updated scores and updated recommended skills. So I kind of have an option for you. I want you to kind of think about. So again, initially take it. You know the amount of time. And then maybe every Monday, let's say, and again, this is just an example. Maybe Mondays, it is called Maintenance Monday, and they step back in and they answer 10 questions. They get updated scores and updated recommendations. Maybe Tuesday and Thursday, they work on IXL around a skill that you have starred for them around part of your curriculum. Yes, go ahead, Emily. I do see your hand raised there.
I was just going to say, I would love to get a copy of that sample schedule. I really like that idea that you have it laid out like throughout the week. And then I'm glad you brought up the fact that they can do both. So there is a large initial diagnostic. And in our experiments last year with the math, it took way longer than 45 minutes. So I think what happens is that the students are logged in, and originally it puts them at like whatever level. And then it takes a significant amount of time to find out where they are, if that's off or if that's different than like a 9th or 10th grade level. So what we are recommending is that as soon as we officially say go on IXL, which we have not said yet, because it's Allie and I are still working on some dazzle clever stuff, right? But as soon as we say go, we do want the kids to do the diagnostic, but they probably won't be able to do it in one day. So to avoid burnout and to avoid them being like, wow, this takes a long time, we're recommending that you have them work on it for a set amount of time, 30 minutes a day until it's done, or 20 questions a day until it's done. Whatever you think is reasonable for the student. We do want them to finish the diagnostic as soon as they can, but we want to walk that line between not just stressing them out about it and having it be hours and hours. I think it did take some of our students up to 2.5 hours last time, Becky, to complete the diagnostic. And that was just for math. So
yeah.
it is taking a significantly longer time than that 45 minutes, but they can pick up right where they left off.
Yep.
And then I would say it's perfectly fine to just have them do it in shorter chunks until it's done, so we're not stressing them out about it.
Absolutely. Yes. And great point is it doesn't have to be done all in one sitting. Have them do it over those multiple days. I love the whole half hour or 20 questions. It will, they don't even have to click save. It just automatically saves for them. And then it will always pick up right where they left off. They never have to start again over from the very beginning. Once we get that initial score. So think about how you're going to use it. And again, this sample is just this perfect way of using IXL within your class with your students. Again, once you get those scores, maintenance Monday, just step in, answer 10 questions in the arena. Tuesday, Thursday, something that you've starred or assigned to them to work on. And then once they've taken the diagnostic, maybe Wednesday and Friday, they've got this action plan with skills on it for them, maybe on Wednesday and Friday. That's what they're working on, part of the skills on that action plan. Yes, I will definitely send you a copy of this sample schedule here. All right. So now that you know exactly what that looks like, I do want to show you a report that lets you quickly view all of your students' diagnostic levels all in one place. So on my teacher side, at the top here, we've got this great analytics tab. And if we're talking about the diagnostic, then you're going to want to start with the overview piece. So we have math off to the left. We have language arts off to the right-hand side. So let's just focus on language arts. And I want to see if my students have taken and completed the portion for language arts. And I will know that they have completed because I see a couple of things. First off, I see this little circle icon next to their name. Also, I see a single pinpointed score off to the right-hand side. If they are still within a range, they are not finished yet. So again, diagnostic overview quickly lets you see who has finished. Now, off to the far right-hand side. Let's look at my student here, Aiden. He has finished. Off to this far right-hand side, here is where you can see their action plan. This is taking all of that information and it puts it on this interactive PDF. So again, your students have this action plan on their side. It's right on their dashboard when they first log in. We'll see that over there. But here we're going to show them their levels. And again, they see levels here, but then we're going to show them skills that they should be working on. Now, let me tell you what the levels mean. The levels correspond to grade levels. So this student overall is at that 560. It means overall in language arts, the student knows 60% of the 5th grade material when it comes to overall language arts. So it doesn't matter that the student is a rostered 10th grader, right? We know that their working level in language arts is more like around halfway through 5th grade. But we don't just simply stop there. We break it down even farther. In the strand of reading strategies, they are also that 560, 60% of 5th grade. But here are the skills that we highly recommend, the top 4 recommended skills that this student should work on. And this meets them right at the level that they are at. Scrolling on down, vocabulary, a little bit higher, right? But here are still some 4 skills recommended for this student. Now, grammar and mechanics, if I were this student, this is probably the area that I would start on. That's my lowest strand. And this is where I would begin. So this is what that action plan is referring to. These are also great, by the way, to print off. You know, if you wanted to have the student, they could actually check off the box then if once they had worked on that skill. And the goal, remember, have them work on these skills until they reach that SMART score of at least an 80. That is always the goal as they're working on the skills. 80 means that they're proficient on a skill. Now, in addition to that overview, right? Maybe you just want to see, how did my entire group of students, how did everyone just do on, we'll go to grammar and mechanics. I want to see everyone just on grammar and mechanics. And when I do, now I'm just going to analyze this particular strand. Now you can see we have actually created different groups of students already for you. So here's my top group. Here's my next group. Here's my lowest group and in between. Created the groups for you. We have even told you what students, let's go to the second group there. So these students right here, they are at this working level. And here are some top skills. When you're talking about, what to work on in small groups, I would pull this group and I would open up one of these skills. And this is what I would work with them on. We're even going to give you the questions to review with them, to work with them on. And then if you take a look, somebody asked about that 3-character ID. Here is that ID. After we did a couple questions, I probably would say, search for L77. And now I want you to work on that skill independently. So this is really using that diagnostic as that instructional tool with your students. Any questions? Here's that quick review around that SMART score. And I talked about it a moment ago. Remember, when they first start working on any of the skills, whether it's a skill being recommended from the diagnostic or a skill you've assigned, it will always start at a 0 when they first begin. And the maximum SMART score is that 100. As they're working, 80 means that they're proficient on the skill, 90 means excellent, 100 means that they've truly mastered the skill. Now, I know mastery is a bit of a high standard for some or all of your students. So what our research actually has shown us is that by having your students work on those skills until they reach at least that SMART score of an 80, like that positively impacts students' outcomes on your state assessments. And what I mean by that is, instead of just having your kids open the skill and maybe get to 15 or 20, bouncing around from skill to skill, like that will never officially have that full impact. So have them stick with a skill and work towards at least an 80. That SMART score is also always saved for them. So let's say they're feeling a little frustrated or time runs out and they only got to a 40 on one day. When they step in the next day, it's going to pick up right where they left off. So think about reminding your students, here's a skill, at least work on it till you get to that SMART score of an 80. Any questions around that SMART score? That this is a key portion, and the SMART score is not a percentage. I know it can kind of think like it might be a percentage. It's not. It's actually giving you information on your students' true understanding of the skill. And it takes into account things like accuracy, consistency, even the recent question that the student has just answered. So that's what that SMART score is. It'll be going up and down as kids are answering questions correctly, and then it'll drop just a bit if they miss a question, but they're always able to get it up again by doing some of that learning. All right. I do want to go back to your analytics tab one more time. I know we started talking about some of the analytics. I want to move to your dashboard because your dashboard underneath your My IXL, again, student dashboard, also your dashboard. You do get some great information right here at the very top. This first number tells you how many questions everybody on your full roster have answered so far this year. You can break it down to those particular groups that you create as well. Your kids are working hard in IXL, so this is a great way to do some of that celebrating of their hard work. Off to the left, here's that skill progress mountain. Like, how many skills have my students practice? Like both math, ELA, anybody on my roster? And then of those, how many did they take to that area of that SMART score of an 80, proficient? And then also, how many have they truly mastered? And again, our theme is at least that proficient area. It tells you if they've worked on IXL at home or at school. And you're also able to see anybody who is currently working on IXL. This takes you to this live classroom report. Or also this live classroom is a great way to monitor your kids as they're working in IXL. But down below here, anything that you've pinned, like I pinned the OIO standards, that's sitting here under my teacher tools. Any of my quizzes, like these are some of my favorite teaching tools. Here's my leaderboard I created and more. But over here off to the left, this is everything you've been starring. And once you no longer need something starred or assigned to your kids, maybe I don't need this one anymore, then just unclick it. And now they don't see that assignment anymore. We don't want that list of assignments to get too long for your students. So just unclick or unclick them all to unassign everything. But I want to highlight this particular report right underneath this mountain. This is one of my go-tos. So I used to love to come here, and it's called the Skills Practice Report. This is one that I checked in, or I got to check in on my students' work as they were using IXL. A lot of great filters along the top. So maybe I'm just looking at all of my students for this week. What have they worked on? So now I can see that list, and coming to the bar graph when I click on it for this volume skill that my students worked on, I can see who mastered it. I can see who is still practicing it, and I can even see anybody who hasn't practiced it just yet. So this gives you some of that data on where your students are in their work on a skill. And then if you ever wanted to dive in a little bit deeper, like let's just say, like, why is Oliver down here? Like, it seems like he's that little icon there off to the right is letting me know he's kind of struggling here. So let me go ahead and click on Oliver's name. And when you click on his name right here, you can see the actual questions that were giving him difficulty. So, wow, let's take a look. Okay, he missed that one. Looks like he's undercounting. This was that volume. Let's see. He's like undercounting things. I notice all the time. So do you notice that without this report called the questions log, I might know that he was missing things, but I wouldn't know why. So this part of it really kind of helps you to maybe know exactly what you want to work on with the student. So we've taken a look at a couple of reports. Remember, we started with that skill practice, and then we clicked on a student's name and we went directly to that question log for a specific student. Any questions around any of those reports? Do a quick reminder. In addition to your analytics, your students actually have their own analytics tab themselves with personalized reports about their own learning on IXL. So your students, let me go to my students side. Here is my students analytics report. It's some of the teacher favorites. But here I get to see, my summary of what I've worked on. It's even going to show me if I had taken the diagnostic, like it would show me all the times I had pinpointed on the diagnostic. But here it's going to show me, for instance, my usage, or maybe the areas I've been having a little bit of trouble in. Then maybe I can come to my teacher and say like, hey, here's a couple of skills I've been struggling with. Can you give me some support? But they have their own analytics tab. And then we also have in the diagnostic, we also have the ability for you to give them a tracker. If you wanted them to track their own progress, I can share that with you in a follow-up. These two great, reports you can pass up to your students. Then they could fill this in as they're taking it, and every time they took it, they could track their progress in math and ELA. So this brings us to the end of our session here today. And as you continue to use and explore IXL on your own, I think you're going to discover this whole universe of different ways that you can use it and the data that it provides you as part of your teaching practice. We are one platform, but we have a lot of different possibilities. And I want to go back to that reminder of that weekly implementation. Like, use IXL perhaps around that diagnostic, but at the same time, use it around part of the curriculum that you're teaching to your students in the classroom. I do have a very brief survey. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to drop this into the chat box for all of you. If you don't mind filling out this very brief survey, it gives me just sort of feedback on our session today. You paste that in and it's coming your way right now. So grab that if you don't mind, fill out that survey. Our session today was called Foundations 2. And if you didn't jot down my email before, jot it down now, as well as that help@ixl.com email. That is if you need any tech support. They'll get back to you right away. And the final thing, follow us on social media. Pick your favorite down below. Looks like I need to update my slide because I don't think Twitter now looks like that anymore. But follow us on any of those. We make updates all the time to our site. And if you're following us on those platforms, you'll be able to see those updates in the moment we make them. So thank you everyone for joining. Emily, I'm going to stay on. Is there any final thing, Emily, you want to end with here?
No, I don't want to end with anything else except have a good weekend. And just for the teachers, Allie and I are working with Tim Militzer from the office to get all of the syncs with Clever and IXL and Dazzle updated. So if it looks
Recording
crazy today
stopped.
when you tried to log in, then don't worry about that. Let's check Monday. And if it still looks crazy Monday, then email me then. Thank you and have a good weekend.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you